Ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, dear colleagues, dear friends of Visegrad, let me welcome you to the beautiful Great Hall of the Chenin Palace, and let me welcome you to the first panel of today's conference. It is true that age is only a number, but I would like to say that 25 years of existence of the Visegrad Group offers a great opportunity for us to reflect on the questions where we are, where we want to be, and how to get there. And I think that we cannot have a better opportunity than to discuss these questions with those gentlemen who will be guiding the Visegrad Group and Central Europe through these turbulent and difficult times. That is why I am deeply honored to introduce His Excellency Lubomír Zaorálek, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Czech Republic, His Excellency Witold Waszczykowski, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Republic of Poland, His Excellency Mr. Szlljarto, Minister of Foreign Affairs and Trade of the Republic of Hungary, and His Excellency Mr. Miroslav Lajcak, Deputy Minister, Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs and European Affairs of the Slovak Republic, and Dr. Libor Rouček, the head of the panel of eminent personalities for the future of the Visegrad Group. I would like to ask each of the distinguished speakers to give us his own reflection of the future of the Visegrad Group, and I would like to kindly ask you to refrain the time limit to, let's say, 5 to 7 minutes, so that we can have some space for a discussion. Thank you very much, and Your Excellency Lubomír Zaorálek, the floor is yours now.
No problem with 10 minutes. I hope he's not going to ring the bell.
Dear Witold, dear Peter, Miro, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honor for me to say a few words at the occasion of 25th anniversary of Visegrad Group. 25 years ago, on February 15th, 1991, the presidents Lech Walesa, Josef Antal, Václav Havel, and their prime ministers and their foreign ministers met nearby an ancient Hungarian castle of Visegrad to sign the common declaration. If I know, and if I'm right, at that time the castle was in ruins, and the Hungarian hosts had great troubles to find an appropriate space for the signature ceremony. Eventually, the leaders ended up in a cellar. Nowadays, if I know, the castle of Visegrad regained much of its previous greatness and turned into a popular tourist center. This story of a renewed prosperity is not only the story of the castle, whose name is on our lips all the time, but also the story of Central Europe as such. The last episode in its long story, or I should perhaps say history, started in post-communist ruins and led to the current European prosperity. It is a story of a post-communist Central Europe turning into a European Central Europe. For me, it's really important that Central Europe is European again, especially if we know that such a things cannot be taken for granted. We all know that the European Union is not a magic solution to all problems. It's not a paradise on the earth where all problems can disappear if only we would say and want the right things. But it is a real place where we can say, want, and most of all do the right things, and if we succeed, our result can make a difference. Dear friends and colleagues, I am convinced that I can say V4 helps. We can make the world a better place to the benefit of our European citizens, as well as to the benefit of people in European neighborhood. Some of the neighboring regions have been badly affected by wars. People who flee these wars deserve our protection and assistance. V4 countries help. We do this by our bilateral humanitarian activities as well as by multilateral donations. Let me just mention the donor conference in London and our contributions to the EU trust funds for Syria, for Africa. However, from the very start of the current crisis, the V4 also pointed out that Europe needs to address the causes of migration and needs to stick to its own rules. Even though there is a conventional wisdom nowadays, such thinking was previously seen as heretical or un-European. I am happy that Europe now seems to be leaving such labels behind and that we all agree that we have to now focus on maintaining functional and unrestricted Schengen system, including the enhanced protection of its external borders. This is a great achievement of the European integration, and we consider it important that citizens and businesses continue to benefit from it. With a great patience and persistence, V4 countries also tried to keep the Western Balkans in the EU focus. We have always believed that these countries deserve a European future. Last time I met my fellow Visegrad ministers in this room was when we applauded our colleagues from the Western Balkans at their signature of the foundation of the Western Balkan Fund last December. It is especially these countries that are particularly hard hit by the current migration wave. That is why V4 countries demanded that the resources of the EU Trust Fund for Syria should be made available to the Western Balkan countries too. But it's not the only way how we support them. We provide them with humanitarian aid from tents to camp beds and sleeping bags, while also sending our police troops there to assist with the border protection and management of refugee flows. We see this as our natural obligation and contribution to a stronger Europe. Allow me to say a few words to this report of many eminent or preeminent personalities. Today's anniversary presents an opportunity, indeed an imperative, to take a step back and consider the future of Visegrad from a more strategic and long-term perspective. This is why I have asked a group of eminent personalities composed of 2 distinguished leaders from each country to draw up a report that would provide strategic guidance and stimulate a conversation on the next 25 years of Visegrad. Let me take this opportunity to thank them for their contribution and welcome their conclusions. The report, apart from stressing the importance of mutual trust, correctly identifies areas that require deeper cohesion and more effective implementation. It's infrastructure, energy, capital markets, science, education. Visegrad can and should become a vehicle for promoting innovation and new sources of growth and jobs. It's not so natural in Europe. But Visegrad is more than a platform for economic integration. It has always been and must remain a force for peace and unity in Europe. This founding mission of Visegrad is all the more relevant in today's times of distress, political fragmentation and regional instability. Our countries must play an active and constructive role in addressing common European challenges through cooperation and dialogue with our partners in the EU. We also have a special responsibility to ensure that the EU's external policies remain open and forward-looking, particularly when it comes to the Western Balkans enlargement and the relation with the Eastern partners. As the report makes clear, the future of Visegrad is firmly tied to the stability and success of the European integration, but it also works the other way around. Europe cannot succeed without a strong, cohesive and engaged Visegrad. That is what should be at the heart of the cooperation, and that is what I call European Central Europe. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and now I would like to ask His Excellency Mr. Witold Waszczykowski for his contribution.
Thank you. Thank you, and thank you very much for inviting us, for organizing this important meeting and the opportunity to share some opinions about our 25 years of cooperation. Ladies and gentlemen, the 25th anniversary of the Visegrad Group offers an opportunity to reflect on both the V4's achievements and its future. We can certainly be proud that we attained our main goal by joining the European Union and NATO. We became active members of the process of the European and Euro-Atlantic integration. We need to acknowledge that the common voice of our countries, our common postulates and solidarity played a crucial role in this success. This success should be understood as a fundamental change of our geopolitical arrangement, which for centuries prevailed in our region. We cannot exclude that without the establishment of the Visegrad Group, we would remain some sort of a buffer zone, geopolitically speaking, in a grey zone of instability. In the past 25 years, the Visegrad Group had its ups and downs. However, the Visegrad Group has become a symbol of Central Europe and a point of reference on the political map of the region. The Visegrad cooperation has become a lasting element of the European architecture. In Poland, the creation of the V4 is considered as one of the most important achievements of foreign policy. At the same time, there are some questions raised concerning the effectiveness of the Visegrad cooperation. To what extent we can understand our interests, what threats we face and how effectively we are able to act within the European Union and NATO. We appreciate the fact that there is a growing public awareness as regards to Visegrad cooperation in our countries. However, we need to take additional steps to ensure that our citizens gain a better understanding of the V4, its role, activities and challenges ahead. We need to remember that the future of the Visegrad cooperation should always mirror the expectations and needs of our societies. It is worth noting that, according to some studies, the most important public expectation concerns economic and trade cooperation, as well as security and defense. Next comes the cooperation within the European Union and the acknowledgement of our common interests in this context. Then there are issues related to transport and energy infrastructure, followed by the regional and cross-border cooperation. Finally, there is a cooperation on the foreign policy agenda, for example, Western Balkans and the Eastern Partnership. It's important to emphasize that this ranking is similar to all 4 Visegrad Group countries, and sometimes even identical. The striking difference is that Poles expect the intensification of the cultural and scientific cooperation, while for the remaining partners, these topics are at the end of the list. Also, it's worth noting that there is a certain correlation between the public expectation and the postulates included in the Visegrad Declaration of 1991. Apart from the issues of European institutions and security, the major aim of the V4 in 1991 was to develop the economic cooperation, infrastructure, north-south, free flow of information, press and cultural values, freedom of contacts between citizens and institutions, as well as cooperation between self-governments. This shows that one should, from time to time, draw inspiration from the source in order to think about the future. Although the ministers of foreign affairs are the key actors involved in the development of Visegrad cooperation, we must always be aware of the socio-public dimension of our activities. Without this dimension, the V4 will only be an instrument for diplomats. It's therefore highly positive that the report of the V4 panel of eminent personalities has focused much attention on the internal cohesion of the Visegrad Group. We have to strengthen the economic integration, primarily by enhancing the development of infrastructure on the north-south axis. Interestingly, this can be considered as a historic postulate, not because it was included in the 1991 declaration, but because already during the Visegrad meeting of 1335 of our kings talk about the importance of the independent trade routes to the development of contacts. We must encourage the ministers of economy and self-government to pay more attention to mutual cooperation. We need to stop looking at others as competitors in the field of foreign investment and replace this logic by solid partnership which would benefit our regional cooperation. Although the statement about the promotion of the culture and identity is much shorter in the panel report than the text on economic cohesion, it does nonetheless draws attention to key questions, which is the persistence of misunderstandings between our societies, prejudices and negative stereotypes in mutual relations. We should design an effective strategy with regard to the distribution of scholarship, to the exchange of contacts between our self-governments, and last but not least to networking opportunities among civil society actors. The creation of a strategy should become the main task of the International Visegrad Fund. As a region, we are currently confronted with two major threats. From the east, there is assertive, even aggressive policy of Russia, and from the south, the wave of migration which has completely destabilized the neighborhood. Unfortunately, one can say that the wheels of Brussels turn very slowly. In addition, the perception of problems and threats by many Western partners is not the same as ours due to different historical experiences. If we do not want to bear the cost of these challenges, we have to act together, cohesively. We need to be involved in the creation of solutions which will improve the cohesion, both politically and economically, of our entire region. Therefore, when we talk about North-South axis, we should not think exclusively about energy, transport, infrastructure, but also about the development of the axis linking Nordic, Baltic, Visegrad, as well the Eastern and Western Balkan countries. We share the concept presented in the panel report, stronger Visegrad for a stronger Europe. We can turn around the phrase so that it would read, stronger Europe through stronger Visegrad. We, the V4, must see our task in a more comprehensive way. We need to fill this gap in our cooperation and in the regional processes of integration. See ourselves as the builders of the whole region and have the courage and capacity to implement our goals in the European Forum. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Minister, and I would like to ask His Excellency Peter Szlljarto, Minister of Foreign Affairs and Trade of the Republic of Hungary.
Thank you very much, dear Lubomír. Thank you very much for the hospitality, and thank you very much for the leadership you've been performing during the last half a year since you have taken the presidency. I understand it was not easy since Miro has set the standard extremely high. So you had to make a terrific performance here, and I have to tell you that we are very satisfied with the leadership, and we appreciate that. And we appreciate this possibility as well to speak about not only the past but the future of the V4 cooperation, as well as we reach the 25th anniversary. And I think that it's a very timely event, since it's not an exaggeration to say currently that Europe has never had to face that many and that serious challenges at the same time since the conclusion of the Second World War than currently. If we had said this sentence a couple of years ago, that would have been an exaggeration. But now this is, let's say, a very modest and realistic evaluation. And we have to realize that the European integration is in danger in many aspects. Since 2008, since we've been facing an economic and financial crisis, the challenges of the Eurozone and the challenges of the relationship between the Eurozone and the non-Eurozone member states in European Union is there at the agenda. And unfortunately, recently, we've heard some voices questioning Schengen zone, and we heard some rumors about some likely intentions to form a mini Schengen. So European integration in many ways is facing challenges. And regarding V4, I think it's not an exaggeration either to say that V4 has never been that important as it is now. And actually, V4 has become the guarantee in Europe to have honesty and a straightforward speech still on the agenda. Because what we've been facing recently in Europe is hypocrisy and political correctness, which actually hinders us from naming things and challenges as they are. And those 4 countries which are represented now at this table have been naming challenges even recently as they are. And sometimes we are attacked because of naming challenges and naming things as they are. But I'm pretty certain that if there's no honesty and if there's no straightforward speech in Europe, then the European integration will not find the common and effective solution to address the challenges we've been facing. I just would like to make a short list of 4 of these kinds of challenges. Number 1, economy. European Union has 8% share of world's population. We produce 16% of world's GDP, but in the meantime we distribute 50% of world's social welfare spending. And you don't need to be an economist to understand that on the long run it's unsustainable. And those countries which are represented now in the table forming Visegrad 4 were able to execute those necessary structural reforms which actually put us in a position that currently we are the growth engine of the European Union. So the economic growth of Europe now mainly comes from the central part of Europe. And that gives us a responsibility to even deepen our economic and trade type cooperation. That's why we subscribe to that Polish proposal to start to form an investment bank, a development bank, especially for the Central European region, because without such kind of an assistance, we will not be able to put together that north to south infrastructure that Witold speaks recently a lot about, and we totally support. Number 2, energy security. Energy security is still a hot issue in Central Europe. And here we have to make very clear that the V4 do not accept double standards. Because when it comes to the issue of energy security here in this region, this is our interest, but not only our responsibility. It is the responsibility of Europe. And if you put into consideration of the streams, let's say the outlook is not very encouraging. There was a very heavy critics on South Stream from Europe and from other friends of ours, and there's no heavy critic against Nord Stream. What is that if not double standards? We have to make sure that we do not accept that, especially when it comes to so important issues like energy security. Third issue, enlargement. Lubomír already mentioned that a couple of months ago, actually on the same day, a very sad day of 13th of November, we were sitting almost in the same company, in this very same meeting room, and we had the Western Balkan friends at the table as well. And we have to make sure that the Visegrad 4 cooperation will always be very supportive to the enlargement of the European Union. We will always be very supportive to the integration of the Western Balkan region, because this is the best way to ensure stability, peace and progress in Western Balkans. And no one from these 4 countries authorized any European leaders to make statements that there will be no enlargement in the upcoming 5 years. These kind of statements are very dangerous, because these kind of statements will take away the hope from those forces and from those pro-European governments in the Western Balkan countries who are committed to be integrated into the European and transatlantic community. And fourth, of course, migration. Migration is the most serious challenge Europe ever had to face, or European Union has ever had to face. And that's why we think that here we have to speak very straightforward, honest, and we have to avoid any kind of hypocrisy. We get a little bit frustrated after having heard so much about the necessity of the control of external borders from European leaders. But nothing happens the day after. Almost everyone speaks about the necessity of control of external borders, but no one, except for us, have done anything so far. So far it was only Hungary to be able to stop the influx. And how? With the help and assistance of our Visegrad colleagues. Poland, Czech Republic and Slovakia sent personnel and equipment to Hungary, sent help and assistance, and that was the only way we could stop the influx. And so far, Hungary was the only country. But this is a successful example. With cooperation, with assistance, with help, it is possible to stop the influx of the migrants into the territory of European Union. Because it is clear, it is absolutely clear that migration increases threat of terror in Europe. And now I can see cover stories in a hypocritical way saying that the Hungarian foreign minister said migration equals terrorism. But this is not the case. Stop being hypocritic and stop lying. Because what I've said was that migration really increases threat of terror in Europe. Because if you have an uncontrolled and unchecked influx an unregulated influx of thousands of people on a daily basis into the territory of European Union, that does increase threat of terror in Europe. And we have to stop being defenseless. If Vienna, Cologne or Paris were not enough, then what kind of a strategy, what kind of a tragedy has to happen that all European leaders recognize that we have to stop being defenseless, and we have to create defense lines in order to stop the enormous influx into the European Union. All in all, dear colleagues, dear friends, we have to admit and we have to realize that V4 has become a brand, and it counts what we say. We became significant. If someone denies that, has to look at the diplomatic activity before the summit of our prime ministers here on Monday. And I think that these kind of critics, which are now very loud against Visegrad 4, has to be actually handled as an honor. As an honor, because if we were not significant, then no one would take care of us. And now it's important what we say. It's significant. So the more critics, the more attacks, the more demarches to our foreign ministries, the more we feel honored and the more we feel encouraged. And what is our responsibility for the future? I think ever closer Visegrad is very important. Ever closer V4 and ever deeper integration and being more and more united, that's the way how we should act in the future. And we have to make sure that we will never accept from anyone to tell us with whom we should cooperate, what we should say, or what we should think. And last but not least, we have to stay shoulder to shoulder. My country was or has been under attack since 2010, since we have taken office. Now Poland is on the agenda. And we have to make sure that whether you like or dislike the decision of the Polish people, there's one thing you have to make: respect it. Because the current Polish government did not won power on lottery. They won fair and free democratic parliamentary elections. And they were not hiding their program. Maybe we like or we dislike their program, but they were not hiding it. The people knew what was their program and they voted for it. And you have to respect it. And no European institution, no European bureaucrat must speak on a way how they speak about Poland and about the Polish people recently, whether they like, whether they dislike the current Polish government. So respect and trust between each other, and we have to expect the others to respect us, and we have to trust each other, and this is the way how we're going to be strong in the future as well, because we have to admit that we are stronger, and we have to continue that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Minister, and now I would like to ask His Excellency Miroslav Lajcak, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign and European Affairs of the Slovak Republic.
Thank you very much. Good morning, dear colleagues, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It's always a pleasure to be here in Czernin, where I started my diplomatic career, and to talk about the topic of the Visegrad cooperation, which is very close to my heart, and I've lived in and with Visegrad for more than 25 years. And this is a discussion about the future, but please allow me to make 2 remarks related to the past of the Visegrad cooperation. First, as Lubomír said, and everybody knows, Visegrad was formally born on February 15th in 1991 in Visegrad, but not everybody knows when, how, and where this idea was conceived. And the truth is that the first brainstorming session on our regional cooperation took place at Bratislava Castle, 9th of April 1990, during a conference which was called Ethics and Politics. The idea was born here. It was the idea of President Václav Havel and Foreign Minister Dinsbyr. And I, as a young diplomat working here, had the chance to be part of the team that was preparing that meeting. In the end, we had 3 heads of states, Václav Havel, Rouček, and Matyar Szőrös. We had 3 prime ministers, 3 foreign ministers, and on top of it, foreign ministers of Austria, Italy, and Yugoslavia attending that meeting, including with the leading intellectuals and civil society activists from Central Europe. So the meeting was new on format, was rich on ideas, and a complete mess in terms of protocol and organization. It was the worst protocolarly organized meeting I've ever attended in my diplomatic career. But nobody complained, because everybody could feel strongly that something new and something big is being born there. And it was really a great meeting. The second memory goes to the 90s in Slovakia, the reign of Prime Minister Michal, whose achievement was that Slovakia was basically excluded from the European and Euro-Atlantic integration of the Central European, of our region. The year 1997 was particularly painful for us, for me personally, because that was the year when in Madrid our 3 countries were invited to join NATO, and in Luxembourg invited to start accession negotiations with the European Union. Slovakia was left out in both cases, and rightly so. But we are still, and we will not forget, and we are grateful to our partners for not forgetting about Slovakia, even in those difficult times, and this empty chair was symbolically present every time, and they were reminding our partners not to forget about Slovakia. And I want to express my particular gratitude to the Czech Republic and to Miloš Zeman, who was the Prime Minister of the Czech Republic at that time, and he took particular effort to help us to catch up. Fortunately, the 1998 elections brought a new dynamic and fresh democratic air, and we really managed to catch up and to join the European Union. And it looks like a history long ago, but it's worth reminding ourselves, and this 25th anniversary is a good opportunity for that. Now, Slovakia is the only country sharing its borders with all 3 other Visegrad partners, which makes us the geographical heart of Visegrad. And we have for long regarded the Visegrad cooperation as a cornerstone of regional stability, and the more satisfied we are to see it now as a well-established brand. In the beginning, the V4 was also regarded by many as a one-purpose vessel only, as an instrument to help us to join the European Union and NATO. And it was expected that with our accession, the V4 will complete its mission. Fortunately, the opposite proved to be true, and it's good for all of us. There has been, there is, and there will be more to it when we speak about the cooperation among the 4 countries. After entering the European Union, the raison d'être of the V4 has not faded away. Our deepened EU integration has raised our cooperation to more sensitive areas that include, for example, defense or energy security, which is for me a proof of growing trust among the 4 countries. The new quality of cooperation after 2004 has resulted in close cooperation and coordination of our positions in Brussels. We realize that we matter when the former French President Sarkozy publicly criticized us for daring to meet and coordinate our positions on in advance of European Councils, and it was mentioned more than once here, this hysteria accompanying the meeting of our prime ministers this morning. We have 25 years of history, we have 11 years of our European history, we have never been a problem for European Union, so I couldn't understand the hysteria, but it was clearly here. On the other hand, paradoxically, 25 years of the history of Visegrad 4 is also 25 years of the commentaries, of the analysis coming from our V4 countries, which are always pronouncing V4 dead. And there are always doubts about our vitality, about our functionality. Whenever we do not reach a joint position or a consensus, I see a number of articles pronouncing V4 dead. As recently as yesterday, I saw some comments from Slovak and Czech commentators saying that our prime ministers just destroyed Visegrad 4 again. So every time I hear or read these comments, I must smile, and fortunately there is this proverb saying that if you have been pronounced dead by mistake, you will live long. So I have high hopes when it comes to the future of the Visegrad 4. The truth is that the V4 has gained a specific historical experience and has been through difficult reforms. And I think that our good sense of pragmatism is so much needed today in the most urgent European debates. Our countries have never been at the origin of any of the major European problems. Let's not forget that. Quite on the contrary, we do our best to be part of the solution in every of these situations. We are, however, sensitive not to be held accountable for failures we have not created. We have demonstrated our maturity when Europe was dealing with complex issues. And today, Visegrad 4 is stronger and more united than ever before. The V4 is not about achieving agreements at all costs. It's more about focusing on common interests. Equality and consensus should be maintained as our main working method. And we all have the right to agree that we disagree. In fact, our civilized way of disagreeing has often mobilized us in search for solutions that do no harm to any one of us. I'm also proud that the V4 Plus format has become very popular and requested by many third countries. It helped us build many useful ad hoc coalitions of like-minded countries. By keeping it flexible and balanced, we can widely present our central European points of view. The route the V4 has taken serves as an inspiration to others. The Visegrad Fund is a unique instrument for sharing our first-hand, authentic and successful transformation and pre-accession experience. As you know, the V4 holds annual ministerial meetings with the Western Balkans and Eastern Partnership countries, and by doing so, we are the only regional group in the European Union. We also have the ability to react swiftly. Just a week after Maidan, the foreign ministers of the Visegrad 4 embarked on a joint mission to Kiev and to Donetsk, and we very soon after that agreed on our division of labor in assisting Ukraine with the implementation of necessary reforms, becoming the European leader to provide concrete assistance to Ukraine. Ladies and gentlemen, at the age of 25, the Visegrad 4 remains a viable project. But looking inwards, building the internal V4 cohesion is an unfinished mission. We have to further intensify our efforts to complete the missing energy and transport links. And we also need to better synchronize our territorial planning or harmonize our energy tariffs. The V4 shall remain an interest-based coalition where our actual priorities and strategies evolve flexibly. Our internal identity is something to promote and work on hard. The natural affinity towards our common V4 space should be even more acknowledged by our citizens. So bringing V4 identity closer to our citizens should be one of our priorities for the time to come. Let's concentrate more comprehensively on the internal dimension of the Visegrad 4 cooperation. And finally, let's stop talking about the V4 enlargement. We can use the V4 Plus format as often as we want and need. But it is obvious now that historic legacy and mental and cultural affinity among the four of us simply do not have a match in any other country. Finally, I like to say, if it's not broken, don't fix it, and it's definitely is valid in case of Visegrad 4. However, I want to commend the work of the panel of eminent persons, and I'm sure that the document they produced will help us to steer our discussions about the future of the Visegrad 4 and also how to better cope with the increasingly challenging international environment. I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Minister. And moving to the eminent panel, I would like to ask Dr. Libor Rouček for presenting the findings and the report itself. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Let me to thank first of all to the Czech presidency and especially to Minister Zaorálek, who came up with this idea to set up the panel of eminent personalities, 2 from each country, and look at not only at our common history of the last 25 years, but also at the current and future challenges, and come with some fresh ideas and proposals on what to do for the future. But before I start talking about the future, let me to say a few words about the past. It was mentioned that we 4 came together 25 years ago. What was the situation like 25 years ago? All, in those days, 3 countries, Poland, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, what we wanted. We wanted to go as fast as possible from the Soviet sphere of influence and join as soon as possible the community of Western nations. Why? Because we had certain experience, common experience under communism, and we wanted to join the transatlantic community because of certain values. What are the values? Human rights, civil rights, rule of law, democracy, and of course security in international affairs, security in Europe and in transatlantic world. So the slogan was return to Europe, but by that we meant return to those values or to join those values. And of course to join the institutions, that means NATO and the European Union, as of those 2 institutions that are based or they are expression of those values, civil rights, human rights, democracy. So 25 years later we can say that we achieved this goal. We achieved it by 2004, where all 4 countries, not 3 but 4, because there was a division of Czechoslovakia, all 4 countries joined NATO, and all 4 countries joined the EU. So you could say, as one of well-known global thinker thought, that's the end of history. But of course there is never the end of history. There is unfinished business. There is unfinished business within our V4 countries. And of course there is unfinished business as far as the European integration is concerned. And as been said, we are facing many challenges, from financial, economic to security threats. We should also mention the situation in eastern Ukraine. Of course, the Middle East, we have the refugee crisis. So we are under challenges, both the EU and of course these 4 countries within the EU, as we were never before. So what are our proposals? What should we do? As has been already mentioned, yes, we should focus on internal cohesion in order to strengthen our cooperation in all fields, from security through political cooperation to economic contacts, all the way to cultural and youth exchange to contacts between and amongst our population. Why to do this? Because by this we contribute to peace and stability and prosperity both in our Central European region, and of course we contribute to overall peace, stability, security in the entire EU. So we are making certain proposals here, from the economic cooperation all the way to cultural exchange. Because if we look at the economic cooperation, you know it because you travel from time to time to Poland or Slovakia or Hungary from Prague. So you see, for instance, the state of our infrastructure. We have to complete the network of our motorways. We have to complete the network of our fast railways. Colleagues were talking about energy security. Yes, we also have to complete certain electricity wires, certain gas and oil pipelines. So we have to focus on this. For this reason, we are proposing that there should be Visegrad Development Fund, so that we can concentrate on those issues. As far as the internal organization of V4 is concerned, we are proposing that we should stay at the stage where we are. That means not to have some sort of secretariat or to form some bureaucratic institution, but to strengthen the coordination on the level of prime ministers and strengthen the coordination of the level of sector ministries. So if I give the example of motorways, yes, in all our 4 countries, at the transport ministry, there should be a person responsible for the coordination among the Visegrad 4 countries. But as we already mentioned, yes, the internal cooperation, internal stability is important, but Visegrad 4, we cannot live outside of EU or outside of NATO. We don't want to, or we shouldn't be building any bloc against the EU or against NATO. That's why we presented this slogan, strong Visegrad within strong EU. Having said that, the Visegrad countries have certain experience, because we all, still 30 years ago, 26 years ago, 27 years ago, we were still part of the communist world. And there we collected certain experience. And we have this experience as far as the transformation or the transition from, let's say, planned economy to market economy. And there is no coincidence when we talk about economic crisis, financial crisis, that none of our 4 countries, no matter whether the country is member of the Eurozone as Slovakia or isn't, faces any financial difficulties, because we made certain experience, we did the reforms, and now we don't have problems, unlike some other countries in the EU. So we think that we could bring this experience both inside the EU, but also, and we are mentioning it, as far as the future enlargement is concerned. Because there is also unfinished business, not for V4, but for the entire EU, as far as the enlargement to Western Balkan is concerned. Yes, it would be unrealistic to say the enlargement has to happen in the next few years. It won't happen because we are not prepared, and also the countries in the region are not prepared. But we shouldn't lose this goal, this strategic goal, important for all of us from our perspective. So here we are proposing, yes, V4 should concentrate on this region, but because we are also neighboring countries such as Ukraine, for instance, or Belarus, or if I look further south, we have Georgia, we have Armenia, and so on. So we could also use our experience, valuable experience, to help those countries in their transition. Look to Ukraine, what difficulties they have. So we could help it with some ideas, because we made the experience, both positive and negative, so we can help there. So in addition to the enlargement to Western Balkans, we also think V4 has a lot of potential as far as the eastern neighborhood is, including, of course, our big neighbor today, our big challenger in the east, and that's Russia. You will see that on many issues in the V4 we agree. There are some issues we don't agree. That's always been the case in the last 25 years, and I don't expect that this will change in the future. But we were capable, able to sort out those differences and work on those issues where we are united, where we can produce something positive, and where we have diverging views, diverging opinions. Okay, let's talk about it in a civilized, democratic way, and let's try to find solution. Coming to the end, this report was meant to present, of course, to the foreign ministers, but I think there is a unique opportunity to use this report and the entire discussion we have today, not only in this country or in V4 countries, but all over Europe about V4, to have more discussion about the whole concept. In our V4 countries, in our neighborhood, because Central Europe is not only Poland, Hungary, Slovakia, Czech Republic, but there is also Austria, there is Slovenia, there is Croatia. In our Polish friends, they also think about the Baltic states, for instance, and of course we have neighbor today the most populous, politically most important, economically most important country, and that's Germany. So that's also why we mentioned Germany, because as I said, V4 shouldn't be understood as some vehicle, against the EU, but on the contrary, our strength should help to form common European ideas and should contribute to our common European success. So once more, thank you very much. I hope this report will be helpful both to you, ministers, but also to our debate we can have not only here, but I do hope that also in other capitals in the region and perhaps even further away. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We still have some 10 minutes, which I hope we can use for some kind of an exchange of views or a discussion or perhaps questions. I think we all agree that the level of trust inside the Visegrad Group is unprecedented within the region, and I propose to think about how to use this trust to make Europe even more, Central Europe even more competitive and stable, and how to get through these difficult times. But that's my suggestion, and I would rather like to open the floor for short questions, and maybe we have time for 2 of them. So if there's anyone who would like to join the discussion, please indicate so by waving at me. Okay, so there's one. Okay, that's it. If you could introduce yourself too, please.
Thank you very much. My name is Furugori from Embassy of Japan in Prague. So, Japan has a framework political dialogue with WIHO. In that sense, I have one question. So, I think WIHO has become an actor of international affairs in its own right. But is there any possibility to coordinate foreign policy to global issues such as human rights, environment, disarmament, and security? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. I think it's a very tough question. Okay, Mr. Minister.
I thought you would be asking in Czech too. Well, we had a meeting prior to this one, and at that meeting I mentioned the cooperation between V4 and Japan as a model of the V4 Plus cooperation. Because we are meeting regularly on an annual basis at the ministerial level, but there is a lot of practical work done by our experts in the meantime. We have a structured dialogue that not only focuses on the foreign policy issues, but the year before last was the year of cultural exchange. focus on new technologies, we focus on economic cooperation. So our meetings is just stock taking of the lots of activities that have been taking place in the meantime. And I mean, all five of us are interested in continuing and expanding this format because we see lots of substance and we see how useful it is for all of us, including the exchange of views on the current foreign policy issues that are close to our regions. But that's really a model to study by others who would wish to develop closer cooperation with Visegrad 4 countries.
Would anyone of the speakers like to add to this? Then there was a gentleman over there. Yes, please.
Thank you. Benjamin Tallis from the Institute of International Relations. Thank you to all the distinguished guests for your honest and candid words. And I think indeed we have much to celebrate. 25 years of Visegrad, and indeed the image of the ruins in the castle to the prosperity of today and the integration of today is a powerful one. However, I would like to address something to Minister Szlljarto, who spoke of the need for not being hypocritical and for honest and strong speaking, and I very much appreciate your candor. However, I'm sure you're also used to hearing strong and honest words in return, and that's what I would hope to provide some more of. What I find hypocritical is claiming to defend Schengen while being among the countries that do the most to destroy it by not taking your share of the burden of the refugees that we actually see arriving in Europe today, of not supporting partners in Western Europe and relying on them to bear exactly this burden, by bringing the return of the logic of walls and division and fences to Europe, when indeed the Visegrad countries have been among the primary beneficiaries of the removal of that logic and the ending of those divisions. Exactly the kind of people-to-people contacts that Libor Rouček was speaking of so eloquently are the kind of people-to-people contacts that have allowed the Visegrad countries to so well integrate and become such a core part of today's European Union. It would be tragic if a strengthened Visegrad was strengthened with walls at its edges, both physically and also walls of the mind. This is what we need to avoid in more strong cooperation of the right kind within Visegrad, while not alienating partners elsewhere, and also by doing our duty and fulfilling our responsibilities to those who are arriving in desperate need, but also not closing our doors.
Benjamin, I'm sorry to have to.
Like to come. Thank you.
Benjamin, yes. Thank you very much for the reflection, and because we only have 3 minutes left, let us provide the space for our speakers, please. And I think it was addressed to Mr. Minister Szlljarto, so.
I think as well. Thank you very much for your question, because you raised very, very important issues in there. And I take 3 points out of it, which I understand you put in your question. Schengen, solidarity, and the European funds. Number one, Schengen. It's not correct to ask you from here, because I have to answer and not ask you, but I would ask you, if I could, whether you have read the Schengen Code or not. I have. And in the Schengen Code it is stated very clearly what is the responsibility of the members of the Schengen zone. And especially, what is the responsibility of a country which is located at the external border of the Schengen zone. And you know what is written in that? It is written that if you are a country located at the external border of the Schengen zone, it is your core responsibility to make sure that your border is only going to be crossed through the official border crossing points during opening hours. So, in order to comply with Schengen regulation, you have to ensure that your green border is not going to be crossed by violating your rules, violating your laws, and violating the Schengen zone regulations. So, opposite to what you have said, I have to tell you that Hungary is among those few countries who've been complying totally and entirely with the Schengen regulations. And those countries who let thousands of people on a daily basis, mostly uncontrolled, unregistered, unchecked and unregulated, to cross their borders and deliver them to the next border of another country, they break the Schengen regulations, and we've been complying. And we've been among those few ones, and we could comply with the Schengen regulations, regardless that you're smiling, together with the 3 Visegrad countries altogether. That's the fact. If you want to save Schengen, if you want Schengen to survive, you have to comply with the Schengen regulations. Regarding solidarity, you know, I would think that being in solidarity with other countries should not mean that you deliver thousands of people on a daily basis to the border of the next country. I don't think that it means solidarity that you deliver thousands of people to put the burden on the shoulder of another country. I think if you stop the influx, and you are in a position like we are, that we can tell Germany, we can tell Austria, we can tell Sweden, that all of them can be sure that through the territory of Hungary, no single irregular migrant will reach the territory of their countries. This is the solidarity. And not that you deliver thousands of people to your next border, to the other country, to put the burden on their shoulder. This is solidarity. Through Hungary, no single irregular migrant reaches the territory, neither Austria nor Germany. And regarding the funds, you know, we hear a lot about that in European politics, and I'm really grateful to you that you have raised this issue here, because I think it's very important to address. You know, these European funds are not humanitarian aid. We deserve them, because they are in the contracts, that we have to receive them. We have opened our economies. Many European and Western European companies made enormous profits in our economies and taken them home. Most, 80%, yeah, right, Witold is right. Most the companies who enjoy the positive impacts of these funds are mainly owned by owners or investors from those countries who usually criticize European funds recently. I mean, who criticize us recently. Western European companies enjoy mostly these funds. So this is not humanitarian aid. This has nothing to do with migration. That has nothing to do with our position regarding migration. And I reject any kind of approaches which say that if you are not in the mainstream, if you don't agree with some other European Union member states, then your funds will be taken away. This is not the European way of thinking. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Minister Waszczykowski would like to add to this.
Very briefly, I would like to add about the solidarity mode in Europe. If we talk about solidarity, we have to remember that solidarity is a two-way street. Two-way street. So let's talk about refugees, about migrants, but let's talk about security issues also, about providing the same level of security for Central Eastern countries, facing the threat coming from the Russia-Ukraine conflict. And we have an enormous problem to convince our partners to be in a solidarity mood with us and to provide the same level of security for this region. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Minister. Yes.
Thank you. Also, because I would like also to add a few words to this important issue. I would like to inform you that during our FAC in Monday, European Union Legal Service confirmed that any country, any member country of EU is obliged to reject those refugees which didn't fulfill criteria and didn't ask for asylum in any country of entry. It was officially said during our session in Monday that the problem is not about solidarity, but about how we are able to keep rules in the current situation. And I would like to thank also to Libor Rouček and all these preeminent personalities to prepare this report to our today's session. And maybe I would like to stress maybe that all my partners supported this report, and maybe also something which was said absolutely clearly by Libor Rouček, that the main issue and main concentration we should devote to support also internal cohesion of the European Union. And there is also a clear goal to play a strong, cohesive, positive role in EU affairs and not to put any block against NATO, against EU. It seems to is fundamental, and I would like to stress it and thank you for eminent personalities to help us to keep this discussion.
Yeah, I will also add that I appreciate the moment of frankness here. It's like when in families the father is telling to his son or daughter of 17 years, as long as you are living under my roof and live off my money, you will be doing what I tell you to do. And that's exactly the attitude you demonstrated. As long as you are receiving our funds with no right to have opinion on your own, you can only follow what we tell you is good for you. That's exactly how you act. Two-way street is something I fully subscribe to. Strange, no one speaks about need for solidarity in relation to the Nord Stream 2 project. When it's about taking 2 billion euro from Ukraine and keep it for ourselves, it's business. It has nothing to do with politics, and forget about solidarity. And my last point, let's confront Western European leaders' statements on migration today and the early summer last year. We have been saying now what we have been saying all the time. They have made a 180 degrees U-turn, but somehow we are always the problem. So it's probably time to really depart from the prejudices and from clichés and start thinking with our minds open.
Thank you very much. Let me conclude the panel first by thanking the distinguished speakers for sharing their thoughts and their ideas, and second by saying that not only that none of the major crises originated in Central Europe, as Mr. Minister Lajcak very rightly said, but what is really fascinating for me is that the multiple crises, which usually mean in this region that we are standing against each other, these multiple crises mean that we are able to cooperate and talk to each other in a frank and open way. And I think this is actually a miracle that Visegrad gave to Central Europe and to Europe in general. Please join me in thanking our panelists, and we will reconvene here pretty soon for the second panel.